Welcome all of you to the last lecture of this 8-week course on environmental planning and management. And the topic that we are going to talk about today is environment compatible growth, mainly the relation between economics and environment. Like whenever we aim for economic growth, is it necessary that environmental degradation is bound to happen, or are there ways where, like in the quest of economic growth, can we take care of environment also? So, we will cover like two basic concepts, one environmental Kuznets curve and the other is environment compatible growth followed by a case study. So, environmental Kuznets curve, it is the hypothesis proposed by Simon Kuznets for our market and economics relation. The same relation has been extended to environmental degradation. So, this curve is basically a hypothesis which states that environmental degradation first increases with economic growth, reaches a peak and then starts decreasing after a certain income level is achieved. If you look at the graph, you have environmental degradation on y axis, income level on x axis, and as the economy grows for any country, the environmental degradation is also increasing. It reaches a peak at the middle income level, okay, and by the time a sufficient income level has reached and the country or the company changes its composition and technique or the technologies or the structure or compliance to the what we say regulations, then though in addition to increasing the income, the environmental degradation starts to decline. As you reach the high income level stage, countries can afford to spend parts of some profit or the revenue on getting cleaner technologies or the renewable technologies, so that environmental degradation can come down. So, that is this relationship, the inverted U-shaped relationship between environmental degradation and per capita income or the income level of a country is represented by environmental Kuznets curve. The initial effect where as you grow the economy, the environmental degradation also increases, that is called scale effect. Like you scale up your production units, industries go on increasing in number, go on expanding their capacities, go on producing more and more products. So, that will lead to more and more utilization of natural resources, more and more pollution and more environmental degradation. But once a certain level is reached, like the economy becomes industrialized, then and they have attained like sufficient level of income, then they can think of changing the composition or the technologies. They can think of changing the ways in which production was going to was traditionally done, and they can think of improving efficiency, switching to renewables, applying like say carbon capture, storage technologies and other ways to reduce the environmental degradation, but not at the cost of economy. This on x axis you can see it goes on increasing. Okay. So, this relationship is called as environmental Kuznets curve. The two effects like scale effect and composition and technique effect. So, based on the stage of growth of a country, whether it is low income, middle income or high income during its journey of development. So, when it is a low income, the dominant effect is the scale effect, and in terms of pollution or degradation trend, it goes on increasing, and in the EKC the curve, the rising curve is represented by the scale effect, which applies mainly to the low income stage of a country. When country is at the middle income, somewhere in the middle around the peak of the EKC curve, both of these effects, scale effects and composition technique effect, they are visible, they are almost equally dominant. The pollution, it reaches a saturation level, or you can say degradation reaches at the saturation stage, and then that is the turning point in the EKC shape. When the stage of growth is at the high income level, it is a composition and technique effect which dominates. The pollution or degradation decreases and the falling part of the curve represents this high income stage or composition and technique effect in the EKC curve. So, the two effects that we saw in the curve, scale effect and composition technique effect, what are the differences or what are the salient features of these two effects? Let us see on different basis. So, scale and composition technique. Its meaning, the degradation increases due to expansion of economic activity. As the country increases its economic activity mainly by urbanization, by industrialization, by increasing its manufacturing and production of goods, it will increase the degradation. That is the scale effect. Composition technique effect, degradation decreases due to structural shift in economy and cleaner production methods. Because after a certain point of time when technology is developed, the preferences in the economy may shift. Environment, social aspect may get more importance in the economy, and considering that there may be a requirement for shifting the traditional ways of producing things and go for more cleaner production methods. Main driver in scale effect, the main driver is increase the output. So, it will increase the use of raw materials, use of energy, increase the population, okay. And in the composition technique effect, the main driver is change the industrial structure, use of clean technology, follow the regulations, compliances, right. In terms of production, it is a quantity which is important, and quantity of production goes on increasing, whereas in composition technique effect, it is a quality of production which will go on improving. Industrial structure mainly dominated by the big centralized industries like mining, food processing, agriculture, heavy manufacturing, where multiple like huge number of products are made, and they are highly energy intensive. Whereas in composition technique effect, there will be shift towards green services, IT or service sector, mainly education, tourism, where the economy keeps on growing, but the environmental degradation will not be very significant, unlike these manufacturing and mining industries. The technology level in scale effect may be primitive, inefficient or polluting machines are used, whereas in composition technique we use advanced, efficient, low cost, low emission technologies. Examples: coal power plants, brick kilns, maybe diesel cars, whereas in composition it is renewable parks, solar parks, eco parks, electric vehicles and so on. So, it was all about the environmental Kuznets curve, the hypothesis, the inverted U-shaped curve, the relationship between environmental degradation and the economic level of the country or the per capita income. The applications of EKC, how is this curve useful to government or to industries? So, it helps governments to plan sustainability protocols or approaches by predicting pollution changes with income. So, once the government has these indicators in the form of EKC chart, like how the pollution or environmental degradation varies with income, per capita income, they can plan their sustainability measures. Supports designing effective environmental regulations. So, it can be a helpful tool to support the formulation of regulations related to environment. It can assist in analyzing economic and environment trade-offs. It shows how green technology can reduce pollution over time. So, because it is a time based graph for economy versus environmental degradation, so it can tell how the change in the technology from conventional to like say greener or cleaner approaches can reduce pollution over a specific period of time. It enables comparison of environmental performance across the countries. Like if we just plot the EKC curves of say one country against other country, okay, the peak or the area under the curve or the level of environmental degradation and the level of economy can help us for like easy comparison between the environmental performance of different countries. It serves as a key tool in environmental economics research, and it can also guide ESG, environmental social governance, which we covered in the previous lecture, and corporate sustainability assessment. So, that was all about environmental Kuznets curve. The second concept that we were supposed to study today is environment compatible growth. What does it mean? Obviously, this growth, when we say it is the economic growth, but economic growth, it has to be compatible with the environment. And even though we do not give much importance to the third pillar of sustainability, but when we try to make a balance between economic growth and environmental protection, human beings being a biotic component of environment, some factors of society or social pillar will automatically be affected, even though the focus has been on environment along with economics. So, ECG, environment compatible growth, is defined as a pattern of economic development that promotes growth while protecting the environment, conserving natural resources and ensuring sustainability for future generations. So, the economic growth should be in such a way that the environment is protected, the natural resources are conserved and sustainability is ensured for future generation. If you look at traditional versus environment compatible growth, what is the difference? Traditional growth may lead to high pollution, resource depletion, short term profits, and they are mostly fossil fuel based. Okay. Whereas environment compatible growth will be emphasizing on low, reduced or zero pollution, the conservation of resources and not the depletion of resources, long term sustainability and not short term profit, renewable energy based instead of fossil fuel based, because these are the ones which comes from nature directly. So, that is the definition of environment compatible growth, and these are some features. The key principles which govern the environment compatible growth are listed as follows. There are several key principles, but these are the most important ones which covers almost all the components of environment. So, one is sustainable use of resources. So, whatever resources we use for manufacturing, production, transportation, we should be using it effectively in such a way that they do not get depleted and none of them are available for future generation. Pollution prevention. The economic growth should be such that the air, water, soil pollution are minimum. Use of renewable energy should be preferred over the use of fossil fuels. Energy and resource efficiency. Emphasis should be on getting more output with less energy, water and raw materials. It means increasing the efficiency of processes and efficiency of utilization of resources. Protection of biodiversity. Obviously, it deals with conservation of forest, wildlife and ecosystems. Waste minimization and recycling. It will promote circular economy or reduce, reuse, recycle economy. And climate resilient development, the economic growth that can adapt to climate change impacts. Since the entire world is grappling with the issue of climate change, so that is why like sometimes environment compatible growth is also commonly called as climate compatible growth, and climate is one of the big components of environment. So, the growth should be in such a way that it is adaptable to the impacts of the climate change. Let us take one case study for this environmental compatible growth. You might have heard about Gujarat solar park or lots of solar parks coming up in Gujarat. It is coming up in other states of India also, but Gujarat is the one which is leading in solar parks and solar energy utilization. This is in Charanka. It is a picture of that park in Charanka. The background here was like in 2005 to 10, the electricity demand growth for Gujarat was almost 6% per year. So, it went on increasing 6% every year, and in 2005 more than 60% of the electricity was coal based, which has very high emission factor around 0.9 kg CO2 per kilowatt hour or per unit of electricity. So, the aim or objective of the government was to decouple growth, the economic growth from emissions, and they had a policy like Gujarat Solar Policy 2009. Under this policy, they wanted to like decouple the economic growth from the emissions part. So, the region which was identified for this one of the biggest solar parks in Asia, it was Charanka, because it was a wasteland, more than 5,000 acres of land was available, and the solar radiation in that region was very high, is very high, 5.5 to 6 kilowatt hour per meter square per day. So, it is a very good irradiation data. So, with this background, the intervention which was carried out by government, mainly it was Gujarat Solar Park with a plant capacity of 500 megawatt. It started with 250 megawatt initially, and then later it got expanded to 500 and then finally to 700 plus megawatt, with the government investing almost 600 crores during that time. So, at present I think it is generating 730 megawatt approximately. So, let us look at the outcomes of this case study, like what are the environmental outcomes and what are the economic outcomes, and then let us interpret whether it was environmentally compatible economic growth case study or not. So, environmental outcomes because of installation of such a big solar park, first outcome was clean energy generation of 1300 to 1500 gigawatt hour per year. Okay, that is a significant amount of energy, and it reduced almost 1.1 million tons of CO2 per year compared to coal. Since majority of power came from coal, like more than 60%, with this solar park, the equivalent amount of coal could be substituted, and the estimated CO2 reduction is around 1.1 million tons per year. Air quality indicators in the local region improved. The SOx level, SO2 levels reduced by 12% in the nearby zones wherever the measurements were carried out. Also, the land which was a wasteland or a semi-arid wasteland, that was put to a better use for generating electricity, and hence it minimized the ecological displacement, because had it been a forest or agricultural land or a fertile land, it would have led to what we say losses in terms of agricultural yield, or the amount of oxygen in that area, or the climatic impacts would have been higher had there been need for cutting down the trees to set up this solar park. But that was not the case in this case study. The economic outcomes were it reduced dependence on coal imports worth 400 to 500 crore annually. So, this was like indirect saving, but it was worth 400 to 500 crore because of this much amount of electricity generated from solar energy. We saved or reduced the coal imports worth this amount. Then contribution to Gujarat's renewable capacity, almost 14% of state solar portfolio. Total private investment attracted a significant amount, like 8,000 to 9,500 crore private investment was attracted in Gujarat for this solar parks. Then the job creation, more than 4,000 jobs were created during construction, but those were mainly temporary jobs. But once the construction installation phase was done, almost 800 permanent jobs in O&M and supporting services were generated. So, these are some of the economic outcomes which sort of uplifted that wasteland region in Gujarat and set that region on the world map of solar parks as one of the very interesting like the pioneering case study kind of thing. In addition to this environmental and economic outcomes, there were several social outcomes also, one of which is listed here. The local villages which were surrounding that park, they saw almost 20 to 25% increase in employment opportunities because of this solar park. And once the solar park was there, the training programs were conducted by government as well as the project developers for local youth. More than 1,000 plus youth were trained so that they can get a job in solar energy sector. Okay. So, this way it had a social impact also. So, this case study can be looked upon as how using a wasteland for generating electricity through a renewable resource or natural resource of sun can create jobs, can impact society positively, and can also lead to economic growth of the country, because it is contributing to electricity generation which can be used in many other industries or for houses and other purposes. So, this case study shows it is possible to achieve good economic profits or returns by investing in environmentally compatible growth. So, to summarize, in this lecture we covered environmental Kuznets curve, like what is the relation between environmental degradation and the per capita income for a country, and it is mainly inverted U type, where environmental degradation is on the y axis, per capita income is on the x axis, and this is the scale effect, this is the composition and technique effect, and here is the saturation, a turning point or a saturation phase where the shift from scale effect to composition and technique effect takes place. Then we saw what is the difference between these two effects on the basis of different parameters. On environmental compatible growth, we saw how it is different from traditional growth, and with the help of a case study of Gujarat Solar Park, we understood that economic growth and environmental protection can go hand in hand together. And that was the crux of this entire course, where we do not ask businesses or corporates or industries or any firm to stop or slow down their economic growth in the name of environmental protection. There are many ways, many strategies with regards to environmental planning and management, and many other approaches through which these what we say ideas or tools can be implemented in such a way that environmental protection and economic growth can go hand in hand together, both contributing to the nation's economy. So, with that we will stop here, and thank you so much.